Recording in progress.
I will call the Thursday, March 20th business meeting of Narberth Borough Council to order. Emily, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll.
Good evening. Council President Bush.
Here.
Council Vice President Rickards. Councilmember Winston.
Here.
Councilmember Borough.
Here.
Councilmember Spear.
Here.
Councilmember Gardini.
Here.
Councilmember Salmonson.
Here.
And Mayor Andrea Deutsch.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so it's usually my practice, when commenting during a meeting to talk about local affairs and not about national affairs, but the situation nationally has started to have huge effects on us locally, so I feel that everybody needs to be paying attention to what's going on now at the federal level. So there are a lot of illegal firings of federal employees going on, and you may think that this primarily affects people who live in Washington, D.C., which is true, but there are a lot of federal employees here in the Philadelphia area. There are a lot living in the borough. I have talked to several people who have been either recently promoted or recently started a job and are therefore considered probationary employees. They don't have the same kind of career protections that people who have been serving longer in the civil service have, and they've been arbitrarily let go by the federal government. Now, a lot of these are caught up in lawsuits. Some of these employees may get their jobs back, but for now there's a lot of people suffering. A lot of people locally who are doing a perfectly fine job who have been accused by the government of incompetence as a pretext for firing them. And we need to be speaking up for these employees who are being arbitrarily fired and illegally fired. The other local tragedy that we've seen is Trump's personal vendetta against the University of Pennsylvania. So my wife is an employee at the University of Pennsylvania. I was planning on discussing this even before this news came down, because Trump has been threatening Swarthmore and Drexel, and as well as UPenn and a couple other area schools as well. But he's going after Pennsylvania's federal funding because 2 years ago, Pennsylvania had a trans woman on its swim team, and it's made the national news. She won a national championship. This was in keeping with the NCAA rules at the time. So it was completely legal and completely within the rules of the governing body, the NCAA. But it was a high-profile trans woman, and it got on Trump's nerves, and he has pulled $175 million in federal funding, or put it on pause. No one's really sure what that means, because it's illegal. It's similar to what's going on at Columbia right now. I mean, Columbia is fighting it in court. People don't know what's going to happen at Penn. It's very likely to mean that grad students will have their acceptances rescinded. This is what's happened in other places. People who've already been accepted to grad school won't be able to go because of the uncertainties about funding. It means people will be let go. Usually it's junior people in various labs, or junior faculty who don't have tenured protections will be let go. It means research projects won't get done. People will just prioritize paying salaries rather than doing important research in order to protect their employees. It's going to mean a huge amount of uncertainty, and it's all going to be focused around here. There are an awful lot of people in the borough of Narberth who are associated with the University of Pennsylvania.
And other universities.
And other universities. Well, yeah. So Drexel may or may not, I mean, the uncertainty is still there for Drexel. I mean, it could hit, it could not, and I'm sure it's affecting...
research funding is absolutely...
Yeah, it's affecting research decisions.
Absolutely.
So you need to speak out. You need to speak out to particularly our Republican Senator, McCormick. He is the one with the most influence at this point. Senator Fetterman as well. obviously talk to our members of the House. However, the real power right now is going to be in the Senate to filibuster bills and to take action, where we have 40 Democrats who, if they stand united, can shut things down. This situation is intolerable and it can't continue. So.
But can I ask one question? I appreciate your comment for the global context, and to be honest, I had asked you to hold off on that for a little while because I was fearful of retribution and wanted to make sure that our federal funding was secure before we really spoke out, and I appreciate that it's come to that point. I would ask maybe F&A to consider on a more local level how these tariffs are going to affect our budget. I was just having a conversation about our signs, that our signs are aluminum, which I did not know. Our equipment has tariffs. And I certainly don't want to put anything more on staff or the office, but I do think it's important for us to demonstrate this is the cost to you locally. This is the direct impact on our budget. Might be important.
Thank you, Cindy. I had to log on earlier and see Trump is attempting to shut down one of the federal agencies that handles library loans, and I was trying to see if it's going to blow up our library's budget if he shuts this down. It doesn't appear so, but the fact that when there's a news break, I have to look and see, well, is this going to blow up our budget? I mean, it's an absurd state of affairs where money and contracts and things that we're relying on. These are contracts. You have to be able to rely on contracts in order to function as a society, and the fact that it's all under question is ridiculous. I mean, I think back to 2 years ago, we had a trans woman as our borough manager. Would we have been unable to do business with a trans woman at the head of our borough government? It boggles the mind. Mayor Deutsch. Do you have some hopefully less...
All is wonderful in the borough.
Thank you.
I really have very short, not a whole lot is happening currently in the borough. On a good note, the police department is meeting Monday with the school board to finalize the rollout of the cameras in the school buses, which I think will be a tremendous help in stopping the people who, in catching people and stopping people who do not stop at the stop signs. Cassie, you could appreciate this. At the stop signs of the buses when they come. So we're working on that. We're proceeding on that, and it should start in the fall. So we're very, very much looking forward to that. Other than that, things are pretty status quo. So, which is all in all a good thing.
Yeah, apparently so. All right, thank you. Maggie.
All right, so not to pile on with the budget news, but to that end, I had a call today with our energy provider who did inform us that given the markets and where we're heading and potential impacts that we haven't yet realized because of various federal policies, our energy costs will be going up for next year. So we will actually have him come to present at next month's work session, just to kind of give us an overview of what we have. It's not a substantial amount, but we are looking at a potential energy increase. This is for our electrical costs. So that'll be a presentation next week. I found it very informative, very educational. Learned a little bit more about how the cooperative purchasing agreement happens. So his name is Graham. So he'll be here at the April 3rd work session for that discussion. And then to some good news related to federal projects, the bridge. So I have a good update for everybody. We're looking to go ahead and advertise the bid on April 3rd. We're going to have an ECMS let date of... Good job, everybody. So our ECMS let date is scheduled for May 8th, and we're anticipating a contractor notice to proceed on August 4th. So during those months, our contractors and consultants will be working on evaluating the bids that come in and choosing the contractor. So we are hopeful to have somebody selected and a contractor in place. And the project team has offered to come and give a presentation to Borough Council at an upcoming work session. It's your preference. We could have them come in and present earlier to take a look more at that construction schedule. If we wait until after the contract is awarded, we can invite the contractor to be present at that presentation. If there's a preference.
I'd like to do that.
Yeah, okay, all right, perfect.
I mean,
Go
I
ahead.
think it would be good to have a general sense of when work is likely to begin around the utilities, right? That was the first.
Right, so the thing that we don't yet have confirmation of is we are not yet on Amtrak's construction schedule. We are on their funding schedule. We are proceeding with letting the bid to select the contractor. There is a caveat in all the bid documents that says we don't actually have the construction schedule yet, but there could be other work, the utility work and the side work, that might be able to proceed earlier, so we'll wait for our consultants to provide us with a little bit more details about what that schedule of activity will look like. And of course, as soon as we know, we'll advertise and make sure that that information is presented to the public so that they can anticipate what sort of impacts that construction might have.
But in any case, not until August.
But certainly, nothing is going to happen until August, and even then, it's going to be a couple more months, probably until you actually see any work being done.
Okay.
And three things I want to point out. Over the past month, we had 2 businesses open up at 650 Montgomery Avenue. So we have Goodness Bowls and the Bond Vet. So if you haven't gone to either of those businesses, they are open. Please check them out. And then just a couple of events coming up. We'll have another meeting before then, but I just want to get it on people's calendars. So we have April 26th, we have the Narberth Run. So I did start to see some little post signs advertising that. And then we have Parks and Rec is holding their movie night. Sorry if I'm stealing any thunder, but Parks and Rec is holding their movie night that same evening. We're going to be showcasing The Sandlot. So we did start advertising that. And then starting on May 8th, the farmer's market returns to Station Circle. And those are my updates.
Thank you. Yes, that is a lot more pleasant news. All right. Let's move on to public comment. So public comment will be 3 minutes. Please begin by giving your name and your address, and then you can begin your comment. We'll start by asking if people in the room would like to make comments. So, John? Okay, so go ahead.
My
Stand
name is
up.
Michael. My name is Michael Pelberg. I live at 536 Dudley. We used to live at 534, but we downsized and bought the house next door. I ran for mayor in '95, and at one time my wife and I owned the Narberth Laundromat building. So we go back a ways. Couple things. You talk about the bridge. What are we looking at in terms of getting people into the borough? When is this feasibly going to be done? What are we looking at?
So if you want to direct your comments and keep commenting, and we can respond after you're done
So,
with your comments.
yeah, I think all of us would like to know, this has been sitting and has been an obstacle for people coming into this borough for quite a while. Now, there's a study. I'd like to know have more concrete answers. When's it going to get done? People want to rent buildings. Why? We have no traffic coming in. The other issue I want addressed, and I've been in my street, the 500 block of Dudley, we are a cut-through area. People are coming from Montgomery to Penn and Wynwood, through Sabine, and through Dudley. They have now monitors for speed. This isn't doing anything. We need to stop people speeding through the borough. And I don't want to wait for a tragedy, because my street is full of kids, animals, and us. I'm retired. I sit on my front porch and read the paper or read. In the morning, I'll say from 7 till 8:30, 40 miles an hour. They see the sign, blink, they slow down. I've had to tell people, slow down. So it's in both directions. And then at night, from 4:30 to 6, again, it's a cut-through. We're a cut-through borough. And these people do not live in the borough. I've talked to the police. Tickets are I'm not asking for tickets to be given out. However, these people need to be warned. You do not speed through the borough. It's 25. All the tickets that are given out in Lower Merion and the tickets that are given in the borough, the majority of the people that get the tickets don't even live in these communities. They're interlopers. So we really need to address that. This is 4 years, my street's been working on this with petitions, looking for speed bumps, just getting officers to sit there for a while and stop these. Well, Mike, we can't ticket them. You don't have to ticket them. But you need to tell them, we know your name, we know your license plate number, and this is the way it is in the borough. You know, everybody's wondering why government isn't setting up limits, and you're talking about it. We need to set limits. This won't be tough, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is a sore subject.
All right, well, your time has expired.
Okay.
Let me first tell you that what we're talking about for the bridge is not a study, it is the replacement project.
I understand.
This is beginning, I mean, the first thing we have to do is take down the utilities, and then we can proceed with taking down the actual bridge and constructing the new one,
So what are we looking at in terms of time?
It's,
18 months to 2 years, I believe.
So it's
It's gonna-
2 years and the project may be completed. This is a feasible end of project, is that what you're saying?
we are putting it out to bid, so yes,
That's-
we are
that's what
expecting
we're
it to,
looking for.
yeah. We
Okay.
will get a timeline when we have the, when we accept the bid, but we don't know for sure, but 2 years?
Okay,
And those updates are, when we get a bridge update, it goes out every week in the flash.
I understand that. And yet, this is, how long
Okay.
has this been sitting?
No, look, there's no one that's gonna crack champagne sooner than these people.
Okay. Well, I'm
I
glad to
hear
hear
you,
that.
but when you look, I'm just calling to your attention, look at that little block, because there's a bridge update, so you can keep.
We do
Up to
also,
date.
on the website, post the meeting minutes from the coordination meetings that I have with our consultants for this project, so those are on the website. So we have monthly coordination, those meetings do go on the website, so you can stay abreast of the updates that we have there as
Can
well.
I just ask, how long has the bridge been sitting in this condition?
I don't know.
We inherit.
It's a different
Yeah.
condition.
Since
Mary-
before,
Mary
since
Jo
before
was
any of us
council
were on
president.
council.
Okay, but I'm just curious,
Like 20 years? Yeah.
I think I think it's been about 12, I think about 12 years ago, we got funding to replace the bridge, right? That was Senator
Yeah.
Casey's first
Yeah,
term.
he was here with,
Yeah,
Mary Jo
so
and.
12,
that's
13 years
great.
ago, so it is, we acknowledge your frustration, we share it, but finish line is in sight. And as for your other concerns, I mean, they've been brought up in the Public Health and Safety Committee, right?
I think you reached out to me and we did.
I did.
Yeah, we did follow up with John, Chief String with that. And you're free to come to the Public Health and Safety
Well, I
meetings.
talked to Chief Flood. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and at the same time, this is an issue that they put, we wanted speed bumps, so they have to do a study, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Iona got speed bumps in the flash of a dime.
It wasn't
So we
much.
are required by
about a
the
year.
state to do a
It's a year.
study before we install traffic
Yeah.
calming. This
Well, this is
is
4
not,
years, okay.
yeah, it's a state requirement to do a study before any, like we can put up that flashing light, but if we're gonna make structural changes, that does require a study. Thanks, I gotta move
Also,
on.
if I may,
Yep.
you can't simply just put up speed bumps because
I
you want to.
I understand
There
that.
are regulations that limit between, it has to be so much feet between intersections. It has to, there are a laundry list of regulations as to where they go. And often, most often because we're such a congested, borough, most streets do not meet the regulations for a speed bump.
Well, the other issue, and that's an important issue, we're getting this borough and every contiguous community is getting denser and denser with people
No
and
question.
vehicles. We've got Suburban Square's going to open up to a megalopolis up there. We've got down here with, you should excuse the expression, Metropolitan, that opened up, Rite Aid, Norbith over
Is it-
there.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have what's going to happen in downtown. So we're going to get more and more people in here, more and more people traversing the borough, and I don't see, we're really prepared for this, because we're not addressing
This
what's
is a whole
going on
different
now.
discussion.
Yeah, all right, sir, I'm afraid your time has expired. I gotta move on. There's other folks online as well who wish to make
Yeah.
a comment. Anybody else in the room wish to make a public comment? Okay, let's move on to the folks online. If you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand, unmute yourself, and make yourself known. If you're online and wish to make a public comment. All right, I see at least one here. Lawrence, if you want to unmute yourself and... Lawrence, do you wish to unmute? Okay.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lawrence Goldberg from 200 Sabine Avenue. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of myself, my wife, our kids, our family, not any organization, community organization, not any lawyers, not represented by any lawyers, come to speak to you about the 201 Sabine issue that I know is on the agenda. And you've heard from me in the past. You know my views on it. I share the majority of the neighbors' view that our ideal situation is a conversion to a full park on the property. But I think the time has come for a change of thinking, a change of approach from everyone. And I would encourage council to think at this point what is feasible for the property. At this point, it's become like a bad divorce between the borough and the neighbors, and everybody's lawyered up. And in a situation like that, the kids always lose. And to be honest, everybody loses. When you guys lawyer up and the community lawyers up, we pay from both ends, and nothing's going to get through and nothing's going to get done if it's a continuation of pursuing options that are unacceptable to the community. I believe there could be a third way. As I said, we prefer a park on the entire property. I believe it's approximately a 3.5 acre parcel. I believe when you look at your subdividing proposal, if you think modestly about maintaining at least about 3 acres of that for an expanded park, and if you subdivide, you limit yourselves to something very modest, like about half an acre. And if you limit yourself to something that's congruous with the community, this is a residential community. This is not downtown. Aside from the school, this is a community of single homes and twin homes. So I think the objection that we certainly had, and a lot of neighbors have had, is to any kind of commercial development, any kind of dense development, any kind of income restricted or subsidized housing that could potentially affect housing values, just like anybody else in the borough. This is our greatest asset, is our homes, and anything that would increase traffic. If you think modestly and accept that those things are off the table and shouldn't be pursued anymore, I think you could come to some kind of acceptable solution to some or most of the community. Maybe not at first, but ultimately, I think a 3 acre park there, accompanied by modest development that is congruous with the community, such as perhaps 2 or 4 twin homes on one slice of the property, would raise enough money for you to demolish the property that you decided now about 3.5 years ago to do, would help the borough move forward and get past this problem that's not going away and is only going to get worse, uglier, and more expensive the more it's kicked down the road, or if it's continued to be pursued in a way that's unacceptable to the community. So I would encourage everyone, when you're discussing this, I know we're not allowed to speak during the discussions, not really the way I think a community dialogue can happen, but I know that we in my family, for one, would be happy to have a compromise and a 3 acre park better than nothing. So we're volunteering to work with you as a bridge to the community to try to find an acceptable solution to the borough and to the residents and to the community.
All right, thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate the sentiment. Is there anybody else online who wishes to make a comment? I don't see anybody from here. Okay. All right, I'm going to declare public comment closed. Thank you, everyone. And let's move to the consent agenda. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda items A through J.
Second.
A through H only, I think. Have you got the old agenda?
Yeah.
This one says A through H.
A
Should
through
it be
H.
A through H?
A through H.
A through H.
Great. Second.
Okay. Any other discussion of the consent agenda?
Yeah, just the update to the employee handbook. I had some comments that I shared with that FNA this evening. And we want to recommend to table till next month. Ms. Dobbs said that was okay with her. There's nothing, most of the stuff is in practice, but there were a couple of tweaks that I saw as an employment lawyer that I discussed with our fellow FNA people, so I'd like to fix those tweaks and give the proposal to full council so that they can see my proposed changes before we adopt it, rather than adopt it and then 2 months later adopt it again. That's just not generally good practice.
So
Okay.
can I move to remove?
Yeah,
item G?
are there any objections to removing item G from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, the motion is adjusted. Any other comments? Okay, we are voting on the consent agenda items A through F and H. All those in favor of passing the consent agenda? Okay, it is unanimous. Let's move on to the consideration items. First, we have the oath of office.
Yeah.
Mayor Deutsch is our,
Is he here? I don't see
Craig
him.
is not here.
Greg's not here though. Okay,
No.
all right.
What? Kelsey update.
Well,
I don't.
I don't
are we-
I don't think
Oh,
you
yeah.
can.
can we administer the oath of office online?
I
Is he
don't
online?
see him anyway, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
well,
Is he not here?
I don't.
we'll have to
Text.
notify, yeah, I mean, you
Yeah, I
can,
can text.
he can, if he can come in, we can do it
Yep,
later.
yep, yep,
All
okay.
right. So we'll pass over this item for now.
Anything goes.
Let's move on to 10B, which is the striping plan.
I move that Borough Council approve the pilot striping plan on the 200 block of Price Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Cindy. All right, let's get a description of the striping plan. Jeff, do you want to talk about this, or somebody else?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I have the old version of the packet that got mailed out this year.
Okay.
I can't find it updated
All right, it's listed as 10B in the,
You want us to talk about generally
Yeah, so this,
public health and safety?
okay, so Gino, go ahead.
the striping plan is provided in the packet, and Manager Dobbs also provided a memo summarizing the background and implementation plan. Do we need a summary of that now, or? But basically, we reviewed this at Public Health and Safety. The committee unanimously approved the recommendation for this pilot striping plan at our March 14th meeting.
So the intention is to create better sight lines at the stop sign, right? Is to make it at intersections?
There's 4 driveways, and so it's adding sight triangles on either side of each of the 4 driveways. And then also removing 2 parking spaces at the intersection of Essex Avenue on Price Avenue on the south side. And those spaces will basically create a pull-off area that will reduce conflicts for cars trying to pass each other on that road. It's a very, very narrow section of the road. So, and then also the sight lines, triangles around the driveways will solve for the sightline issues for vehicles exiting the driveways onto the road.
And this is coming out of resident concerns. Residents of that block of Price have been telling us that this is unsafe. So the striping plan is to see whether this improves the situation or whether people just want their parking back. So.
Right, it's a temporary measure, low-cost temporary measure.
Yeah.
It's a pilot, so if they come back in 6 months and say they're not happy, we will respond to that. But
Okay. Any further discussion here at council? All right, let's vote to approve the striping plan pilot on the 200 block of Price Avenue. All those in favor? All right, it is unanimous. Okay. Rules of council. No.
That's what I have.
Yeah, 10C is rules of council.
I move that Borough Council adopt Resolution 2025-07 to approve the revisions to the manual and rules of procedure and adopt the public comment guidelines policy document.
Second.
Okay. I will note that the council's been discussing this for a long while. In general, the manual and rules of procedure are identical to how we've been doing business. The public comment guidelines also do not represent significant changes from how we've been doing business, in my opinion. I'll let Jim talk about some of the changes.
Okay, yeah, sure. For public comment in particular, early on I did a survey of peer boroughs and found that a 3-minute time limit is fairly standard, and even 2 minutes is not uncommon. So we did keep a 3-minute time limit. We also wrote in extensive consideration for allowing people to run over or contract public comment in the case of a tight meeting. One thing I thought was really important with both this and rules of council was to identify a relationship with the technology that's evolved since COVID and before COVID, that we use this Zoom, what's it called again, the OWL device that you're seeing on the screen here. This is something that now films all of our meetings. It's great for public access, in my opinion. It archives our meetings. But previous to now, we lacked a policy on exactly, what this means to us here. So, and what we landed on is that it's essentially, this technology is a benefit. It's an amenity for the public. And if we cannot rely, we don't employ an AV person. It's relatively cheap equipment.
You're a volunteer, right?
Yeah. Number one is that we're not necessarily conducting our meetings for the cameras, and that anyone who wants to participate in a meeting, either as a council person or as a public commenter, there's really no substitute for showing up, and that in the event of a technology failure, we won't be able to offer that.
The meeting will go on.
The meeting goes on, yes. Let's see what else is in here. We added a little bit about just what the purpose of public comment is, and iterating that it's not necessarily the best place for questions and answers, because a lot goes on here, and we don't very usually don't have answers at the ready. But public comment is made to get your feelings across, your opinions across as feedback to us. Let's see, it offers substantial leeway to the chair of the meeting, or whoever's chair of the meeting. And that's pretty much it for public comment, just by what the meat of it is. In terms of the rules of council, that has been circulating for quite a while. I hope everyone has had a chance to at least dip into that. It has not changed in a month or two. We've only been dotting I's in the last 3 or 4 months, I think. The one change from what is even in the packet is we have added, or there's been a request to add a late section on council people's contacts with interested parties.
Yeah, I'll read that out loud. Let's
Okay.
talk about the other stuff
That's in
first.
the new
So,
packet.
does anybody have any concerns about the public comment section that Jim has described, or any of the other rules that have been around, any of the other rules besides the one that Jim just mentioned? Anybody have any discussion there? Okay. So I'm just going to read aloud the other proposed rule, which is, council members shall give due consideration to the potential downsides of discussions with individuals who have property, development, or other interests in the borough. Should such a discussion occur, council members shall not imply that they represent the majority of consensus of the council as a whole. Council members should clarify that they speak only for themselves and avoid creating the impression that they have special influence over other council members. So this is codifying what I think has been unofficial practice for a while. Private discussions with individuals, you can't speak for all of council. I think it's really important to know that. And should you talk to any of us, we can't speak for all of council. We can give you our opinions, but you can't rely on one council member's statement. It's the will of council as a whole that matters. So I'm open to, anybody want to discuss this or have objections to this rule? Okay. I would propose then that this be added as, let's see, where are we? N2.
Two.
I'm going to call it N2?
Well, there is an N2, but we could tag this on the end of it.
Yeah, or we could call it like a new N7 after partisan political roles, which is a similar rule.
All
You
right.
prefer it an N2?
Well, I don't know. 2 looked kind of similar to the.
Okay, well, let's call it, let's make it the new N3 and number everything after it. So I propose that we amend the rules of council to make this rule a new N3 entitled, I don't think I have a title for it. Discussions with interested individual? No.
Did the others have titles?
Private discussions, they do. They have like a 2-word.
I think discussions with interested individuals.
Okay.
Just make it
Discussions
simple.
with interested individuals. Are there any objections to that amendment to the rules of council? Okay. In that case, I think we are in a position to vote on this. Does our solicitor agree?
Yes.
All right. Let's wait a second for Cindy to return.
Can I take the time to recognize Councilman Gaudini as our primary drafter of the final forms of these? Put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, and I think it is going to be useful because there are going to be inevitable AV failures, and it's important to have rules in place for what happens if there's a failure or if.
Yeah.
I mean, this also makes it clear that the person chairing a meeting should not be coming in from Zoom. which
That's right.
I've done that and it's terrible. I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
I have passed it along to Cindy when I've been out.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good rule to have in
It
place.
suggests a sort of a chain of command, if the president is online, if the vice president is online, both are online, it bumps down the line to
Yeah.
who's preferred to chair a meeting.
I fully approve of that. Any other comments?
I guess I would just echo, Michael took the labor and more on this. And it went through a lot of iterations. And I think we have a really solid,
Yeah.
we spent, I don't know, how many different sessions, 5, 6 or something talking about.
A year.
Yeah. No, I know, over the course of a year. I mean, since you guys joined council, basically, this was the first project, right? So,
All right, I'm going to call the vote.
Okay.
So we're voting on the rules of, manual and rules of procedure as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, passes 6-0. Councilmember Rickards is absent. Let's move on to 10D, which is Oktoberfest.
and just before you go, Mr. Stevens is on his way to get sworn.
It's okay, we voted. So
I had to go to the restroom, but I
Sorry.
have to say, I met young voters out in the hallway who are very interested in sending us all a proposal for the snack shop. And they weren't sure if they were allowed and if they were under 18. I said, the younger the better.
Get your butts in.
They
What do
came a
what do
little
they think
late.
we're doing in here?
And they missed the public comment, but I said, we want to hear the younger the better. They have this whole proposal, so I asked them to forward us a proposal to make an agenda item.
Yeah, that's super
Okay,
cool.
that sounds good.
I didn't have an opposing vote.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the Oktoberfest. You want to make that motion?
I do, and then I'm going to go to the bathroom because I didn't get to go.
Should we take a 2-minute break?
No, but
It's crazy.
I'm thankful that the Oktoberfest is coming back, so I don't have it in front of me. I move
Alcohol usage
the
agreement,
alcohol usage of the Oktoberfest.
in favor. Okay, any, second?
No, that's exciting.
Okay. All right, let's just summarize. Maggie, you want to summarize this one for us?
Sure, so we were approached to host the Oktoberfest in Narberth Park. So we have our representative, Lee, I'm sorry, say your last name please.
Lee Hawkinson, and just to correct you, I'm sorry, Friends of Sabine Park is proposing to host this.
Thank you, okay. So Lee Hawkinson, on behalf of Friends of Sabine Park, is proposing to host Oktoberfest in Narberth Park on October 26th.
October 11th.
I'm getting all my days wrong, thank you, October 11th, I should
Okay.
tell you.
Like this.
So one of the things that we had discussed was that in addition to the event application, we would need to have an indemnification agreement related to alcohol usage on borough-owned property. Solicitor Walco provided a draft which we updated to reflect all of the borough stipulations. So we would just ask that this indemnification agreement be signed, and then that would allow us to proceed with all of the other administrative tasks that we need, including licensing, insurance, and other things that we will work out directly with the host of the event as part of the special events permit process.
Okay. And Chief String, you're comfortable with the Oktoberfest as proposed?
Yes, we've met and all the requirements are, being adhered to, which is acceptable to us.
All right. I mean, I share Cindy's excitement that Oktoberfest is coming back. We have several Narberth Oktoberfest classes that have pride of place in our cabinet. So looking forward to adding some more.
May I provide a quick update? We're happy to announce I had a great conversation with John Nardi, so our partner fund recipient would be American Legion, specifically to help out with the Memorial Day Parade. So that's good news.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We love the Memorial Day Parade as well. Okay, any other comments? All right, let's vote to approve the alcohol usage agreement for Oktoberfest. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Okay, office vestibule design. Can we get this on screen maybe? Is that going to be possible?
Yeah.
First, I'll take a motion.
I move the Borough Council approve the proposed office vestibule design.
And second?
Second.
Seconded by Jim, okay. Hey, here's Craig, all right, we'll put you next. All right, so we are looking to, all right, this is a proposed change to the office that will create an entry area to create, for safety reasons, to create a separated entry area to the main borough office downstairs. All right, and, Jeff, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's become clear to me in my time here that, the office is lacking in a secure entrance. It's something that our insurance has mentioned every property tour that they do each year, that our office just should not be wide open to the public in the sense that they can walk in, walk right through, and be at our desks. So we had Yarkies do the original draft for this, which is the pricing that was included in our capital plan, which was in the neighborhood of $25,000. Their version featured firearm resistant panels, a little what I would say overboard for our borough office. We're still trying to keep it inviting, warm, and welcoming. So this is just a simple enclosure. The Taylor-style windows will be ADA heights. The great requirement, we will have 2 of them there. We will have a key fob access on the door as well. And we will not be going floor, full height of the wall, so that way we don't have to move HVAC, we don't need to relocate fire sprinklers, electrical. So this will be 8 feet tall. And for those of you who have been in our office, it will mirror the layout that we have now. So when you walk in, it is 112 inches wide, and it is roughly 7 feet in. So, there's ample space in there for folks to stand, and yeah, it's something that I feel will make our employees feel a bit better being at the desk, but will also help, keep people on track with what they're supposed to be doing.
I can't quite tell by the renderings. Is there another wall behind it, or can people look through into the office?
So
Look through the windows.
that's what you would walk into. So when you walk in from the hallway,
Right.
you would walk right into
But
that.
if you're in the vestibule, say you're working and you're at the window, somebody from the office in the vestibule, as someone approaches the vestibule, approaches the window, can they look behind you and see what's going on in the office, or?
They will have their line of Kelsey
Okay,
of an employee there, so
Okay.
they won't be able to see beyond.
beyond that, okay. Okay.
Is there any sort of like buzzer or ring or
That's something
something,
that-
so that people are working, they might not notice somebody at the desk?
That we'll have to work out
Okay.
once it's built, what sort of,
It's simple,
bell, buzzer, or something or another.
buy it for $5.
Because, we do allow folks to eat lunch and take breaks, so
Right.
they're not at their desk all day, so.
Right. Okay.
All right, and this has also been a request from multiple borough managers at this point who have expressed the same thoughts. So, like I said, I shared Jeff's opinion that some of the earlier designs were not really suitable for Narberth, or akin to like a pawn shop or something. But this is more like a standard office, or other government facilities I've been in. Does anybody else on council have? All right, so this is, I see the estimate is 6,700, and
We would install it, so I would just adjust my guys' week, so we would just work on the Saturday and Sunday to get this installed, so we don't disrupt the office week.
Will the door be accessible, wheelchair
Yes.
accessible with? Okay, thank you. Yeah, it looks a little narrow. This is just a sketch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll still sit down with our code enforcement officer, Kev Walsh, and they'll give us all the heights and depths and widths, that thing should be, and we'll build it based upon that.
And just as a point of logistics, will the people at this table have access to key fob to the office? Okay. To
Yes.
get our mail and stuff like that?
Right, so this will be keyed to the same permissions as the other key fobs in the building.
Okay.
Do you mail?
Huh?
we do get mail. There's cubbies.
There's cubbies, there's.
We don't get a lot of
mail.
mail.
You know what, as mayor,
Bring
as,
it up.
You have a mailbox in
As-
the office with your name.
You didn't get
Is
the
this why
Val-
you've not been responding to my?
the Valentine's Day cards? You didn't get the...
as mayor, occasionally I do get, workmen.
Yeah.
We should tell Mr. Stevens when he gets sworn in, the Civil Service Commission does occasionally get mail, and usually the borough manager will notify members of the Civil Service Commission that they have mail.
All right, and then as part of this, the plan is also to repaint the office downstairs.
Yes.
Right, so that green shade or something similar to that green?
Yeah, we're just trying to get away from the sterile gray that's in there, try to give a bit of a nice little pop of color.
Okay. So it'll be a change to the office for those listening. All right, everyone comfortable with this? Okay, and like I said, our insurance provider had dropped hints that they had funding for this, so we're gonna reach out to them and see if they'll mean, it won't cover the whole thing. A few $100s to help do security improvements apparently is something that they could provide, so, okay. Let's vote to approve the office vestibule design. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Congratulations. This is, I know it's been a challenge to get this particular change through council, so.
I will take all the credit for it, thank you.
All right. Next item is 10F.
Craig?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's go back to our original 10A, which is the oath of office for Craig Stevens.
Do we have, the Bible should be for that?
Oh, yeah, so what do you wish to swear on?
Bible or Constitution?
It doesn't matter?
All right, we may only, well, I don't think we could, can we swear on Robert's rules of order?
Constitution.
It doesn't matter, the little one. Take your pick.
What's your Constitution?
I'm in favor of the Constitution.
All
right.
That's good over here.
Someone want to take a photo?
Should I?
All right.
Should I just introduce Craig since?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Mr. Stevens is coming on to civil service to replace a vacancy. I thought he was replacing me, but it turned out that Lynn O'Connor decided not to re-up for her second, for another term, so Craig is taking her spot for a full term. He's coming on at my recommendation. Craig worked for a very long time at Germantown Friends School. Full disclosure, he was technically my wife's boss for a couple of years. Lives on Haverford Avenue, long-time resident along with his wife Wynn. And I'm sure he's going to be a great member of the commission. And for those of you who don't know, the Civil Service Commission is responsible for vetting, hiring our police officers and promoting one to sergeant if there's a vacancy. And then they present their recommendations to council who actually hires our police officers. So it's a pretty important job.
So being a Friend Central alumni, I'll still give you the oath of office. Please place your left hand on the Constitution, raise your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name.
Craig Stevens,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and I will discharge the duties of my office
and I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevens. Thank you, Mayor Deutsch. Okay. Now, I'll point out that not all of our volunteer jobs involve being sworn in. There's plenty that are much more casual. Thank you. Okay, and our final consideration item is the road paving program.
I move that Borough Council approve advertisement of the 2025 road paving program project.
A second.
Seconded by Cindy. Okay. Maggie, Jeff, who wants to summarize here?
Actually, Jeff.
Or actually-
Yeah, I can take care of this one, yeah. So, Borough is looking to continue the road paving program. This year, we have about 3/4 of a mile worth of roadway that we're planning on doing. Those roadways consist of.
Can we put that up as well, or is it?
Sorry?
Or see if we can get the image of the project up on screen for those.
And I just lost it on my screen here too, so let me
I
see.
think it's in the packet, right?
Okay.
It says it's gonna be easy to pull.
It's just text?
Yeah.
All right, if it's just text, don't worry
We saw it
about
last time.
it. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
So this year, the total budget is coming in just above $300,000, which is right in line with what Jeff was, expecting to be, and what we had kind of initially budgeted for it. So we're excited, looking forward to launching it, and we had a great contractor last year that did the road program, and we're hoping that we'll have another great one this year. And, I think think that's about it. So, do you guys have any questions?
I just had a comment. I would just ask that we consider restriping for narrowing the travel lane on Meeting House Lane when the time comes, just as a consideration.
How would that?
That's for the future. So this was a.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can look into that. We have striping as part of the budget, so we'll kind of work with the contractor to to put everything in place where it needs to be.
Jim?
There are speed bumps intended for Meeting House Lane. Is that part of this paving, or is that something we add later?
So the speed humps on Meeting House, those are going to be an ad alternate, so we're going to see what the price comes in for those speed humps, and then based on that, or based on the price of that, me and Jeff will kind of decide whether we want the contractor to do that, or if we'd rather have Public Works do them themselves.
And we are getting temporary speed bumps put in
Yeah.
there prior to the paving.
Right. But on Iona, they're going to be, is that one being made permanent?
When
Yes.
they pave it, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so the reason that the other two aren't in this bid is because we haven't set them out yet, so we haven't been able to track any of the effectiveness there. And so if they do prove to be effective, then we have them in for a base bid, and we can either choose to do them or we can do them.
I'll just add that we have state money that comes in every year that is used for highways. It's very narrow. You can only use it for highway repairs or maybe, it's a real pain to use it for anything other than highway repairs. So it's intended for this kind of project. And that's why we're structuring it this way, to have annual road paving using the state highway aid money. Okay, let's vote to advertise the 2025 road paving program project. All those in favor? Okay, it is unanimous. Is everyone? Okay, we do have two discussion items. So these are both related to 201 Sabine, and they are both not a final act on behalf of council, but they are both sort of information gathering or our attempts to learn the value of the property that we have were we to sell it, and the value of subdividing the property. Here's a picture of one of the potential subdivision plans. So what we're discussing today for the first item is whether to have an appraisal done of this potential subdivision to know what the value would be if we were to actually subdivide and then sell it. That would be to be information gathering at this point.
Right, so Pinoni has created for us 3 separate options for a potential subdivision. So it would be 1 acre, 1.5 acre, and 2 acre options. The area that would be proposed as part of the subdivision, again, this is mainly conceptual, but it would be the area in red. So that would be the area that would be perceived as being subdivided from the balance of the property. You can see on there we do have the right-of-way lines identified. It's a little hard to read all the way back here what those dash lines are, but the right-of-way lines and then the building envelope to give a sense of what the area would be that an actual structure could be located within that area. So if you want to scroll to the next one, so you can see just the increase in the area. So the line shifts over. The consideration for these lines also took into account the potential need for access to that site along Montgomery Avenue. If a development were to come in up there, it would need potentially separate access either on Montgomery Avenue or on Sabine. So the orientation of the subdivision lines would create the opportunity to have some sort of access, and it would obviously need to meet, any future development would need to meet all subdivision land development ordinance regulations, zoning regulations, and so on and so forth. So from a traffic safety and ingress and egress, that is all very conceptual and not really able to be discussed at this time because we don't actually have anything to review. But the intent of this is just to show how much acreage then would be kind of remaining in the event that we were to do a subdivision along the frontage of the property along Montgomery Avenue. So if there's interest then from council, the next step would be, yes, we could seek an appraisal of these options, and then that would be, you know, if there's an option in particular you wanted to pursue, or if you wanted to have an appraisal of all three of the options, as that would change the valuation of the property given its acreage.
And I'll just note that in this concept, the rest of the space would be greened. The plan would be to take down the existing buildings and, to the extent possible, make the rest of the space green space. And all of this would result in more green space than the current setup, which is 0.75 acres. It's less than an acre. What's that? It's less than an acre of current green space on the site. So just to explain to members of the public what you might be seeing. The idea would be to keep the development on Montgomery, which is busier, which has similar sized projects around it, and keep the part that is adjacent to the residential area more, make the green space, bring the green space over there. Council members.
Can you just remind me what the total acreage of the lot is, so that if this does increase, I don't have a sense of how much of an increase of parkland each of these would result in.
Adding it together, looks like it's 3.3.
Yeah.
Tony, do you have numbers?
No, but I don't know what
Any
the
option is
current.
more than doubling it.
3.3 is
For
the
the whole
parcel,
total lot.
is the total, or
Total
that's the
lot.
total lot. No, I'm
Yeah.
saying how much more of an increase in parkland space.
So if the
Each
current
one
park
is-
is 0.75,
Yeah.
it looks
Yeah,
like the
okay.
worst case scenario, like selling off 2 acres, will leave 1.58 acres. So,
Yeah, well, there would have to be access presumably or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, well, that's the right of way, right, so,
okay, 1.3 acres.
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
So it doubles it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, the broad concept here is that we're in a fact-finding mode.
Yeah.
Right? And then just kind of previewing the next item, but it makes sense to me that in order to actually have a policy conversation about where to head, I'm a big believer in having informed policymaking. And so being able to actually get some baseline understanding of the site, I think is important, so that we can actually start to think through this as a body. And I think about that in a number of ways, but in this way, that also makes a lot of sense to me.
I just, you know, I want to be really clear on a couple of things here, because, you know, we've talked about getting an assessment of the property, and I think the public has made assumptions about what that means, and so I want to be forthright about this. I was the one who first suggested that we get an assessment of the property, because quite frankly, in my view, depending on what those assessments look like, if they're not going to bring significant revenue to the borough, I have no interest in selling off the property. You know, and I think I said this, you know, if it gets us $500,000, that's a lot different than if it gets us $5 million or $50 million. And I was the one who wanted to do this because I think it's going to come in low, and it's going to influence my view of whether I would be in favor of any development of the property or sale of the property at all. And, you know, I think there's been a lot of misapprehension of the public on why we were doing this and what the motivation was. And I'm just putting it out there that this was my idea initially, not because I think that this leads to any particular outcome, and in fact, probably would influence me, you know, if I think we have a duty to weigh the fiduciary impact, or a fiduciary duty to weigh the impact of not having the revenue source for the school. But I also recognize that once you develop a property, it's forever. And It's gonna, the forever part really bothers me. And I'm gonna take that part very seriously. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I would gladly donate a big portion of it to the borough to tear down the building and make this a park.
Well, Puff Gallery, they do sell the tickets. That somebody won last year.
Yeah, oh, there you go. Well, the Harbor Spotlight says, if I won the lottery, this is what I would do. So.
Duly noted.
So, anyway, I just wanted to get that out there because, again, I was the one who first suggested that we get the assessment, and I think people made the assumption that we were doing that for a particular outcome, and that's 100% not the case. At least, I can't speak for why everybody else agreed with me, but that's why I proposed it in the first place.
So, are we putting any restrictions when they do the assessment? They're assuming that the person can buy it and build on it whatever is allowed by zoning, right?
I think we should assume that, if we have these assessments done, I would propose that it be zoned, that we treat it as if it were zoned with the rest of Montgomery Avenue, which is, what is that? 5B? Yeah, so, the strip of Montgomery running right up to the park is all 5B. So I would propose that would be the logical zoning category.
So it could be some combination of commercial and residential, or it has to be all commercial or all residential?
I think either would be allowed. I think mixed use is allowed. It's
Currently, mixed use is required in 5B.
Yeah.
mixed use is required. Are you
Yes.
sure?
I'm
Because
positive.
But if you're going to have residential, you have to have commercial.
You have to have ground floor commercial in 5B and 5A.
okay.
I guess the point I'm trying to
Sorry, go ahead, Ira.
to get at is that the person doing the assessment should assume that the zoning doesn't change.
I'm saying that we would, if we did this, we would likely zone this as 5B, which is the rest of Montgomery. I don't believe it is currently zoned 5B.
There's no direction right now in that regard.
But the person doing the assessment would have to know if they should be assessing it as though it could be rezoned and to be all residential, for example, which would probably increase the price.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying.
I would
give clear
propose that
direction.
when we have it assessed, we give them the direction that it would be zoned 5B, which is, again, the bordering zoning. I'm open to suggestions otherwise, but that
Well,
would be
the only reason I bring it up is because it's going to change the price,
Yeah.
a lot.
If they can put up an apartment versus a mixed
Right.
use.
Would
So,
we
I
be able
mean-
to infer the assessment, for all residential, if it were to stay all residential?
How is it zoned right now?
3B.
3B,
Which is,
It's currently zoned 3B.
which is
And what is
Which is one of the
what is that?
residential.
Which is probably the district that a lot of folks here live in.
It's mostly single family, so.
So
would not-
it couldn't be an apartment building, or?
It can't be a lot of things. It can't be a business, I don't think, in 3B. You can do a home-based
Okay, well,
business.
There's various things.
3B is like a residential neighborhood, so 3B was what you'd see.
I'm not an expert on what the different zonings are. I'm just telling you that the directions you give to the assessor are very important because it could be double the price,
Yeah.
depending on what instructions you
So
give.
maybe we need to say, assess it 3B and 5B.
We're not gonna assess it as 3B. There's no point in offering a developer a 3B property, which would all be, I don't even know what they could put on that, but I don't feel that is.
Because it's too.
We are not proposing to turn this into more single-family houses, right? That is not council's goal. That would be, if we declared it 3B, then that is about all that could be built there, and I do not think there would be sufficient value of selling the property. It wouldn't make sense to sell it for.
I'm sorry, and again, I don't know this, is that kind of missing middle, the little cottages, the quads, is that 3B?
We don't have that at all right now, so.
3B is most of the borough is zone 3B. Most of the residential areas of the borough are zone 3B.
So wait, we were just talking about this is possible to do kind of the smaller, first-time home buyer.
Right.
I don't think we want to foreclose the idea. If we're going to open this up, we ought to at least have the possibility of a commercial property. I don't think it makes sense to open this up to.
But
I think that if we're gonna end up, and I don't know that this is right, it seems like we're not ready to have this specific conversation, but I would suggest that And if we are, then that's fine. But when it does come to the point where we want to figure that out, I would suggest that there be a compelling policy interest in whatever we would want to actually see on that, since we currently control the property.
And then the question becomes, do you tell the assessor to assess it with different usage types? Rather than picking one, because you don't necessarily know which one is where it's more valuable. I mean, in some ways, you might want to have them assess it at, where the maximal value would be.
Right.
I think we have to do something. I mean, we have got to do something on Sabine. The idea of saying, give us 3 different zoning assessments, if that does not radically increase the cost of the assessment, I think those are valuable data for us to have.
Well, we have to at least give them some direction on this.
Clearly.
Let's pause for a second. Let's see if Maggie has I see her furiously writing down here. Do you have a suggestion for how to proceed here? What might be the best way to get a reasonable assessment? I think ultimately, if the assessment doesn't help us, or if it's just, if they're not able to come up with a useful number, then it's a waste of our time.
I think the first decision is which parcel would you like to spend the money on having appraised? And then there will need to be information given to the appraiser of what the highest and best use for that property is. So those are 2 decisions that we're going to need to have happen.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we're picking one of these scenarios to send out for assessment?
Well, I think that the discussion is you could pick all 3 and say, hey, we want to know what all 3 are worth. We don't want to do this one, so let's just do these. You're not choosing them, you're just saying which one is worth pursuing and spending a little bit more money to run through that option.
All right.
But the more parameters you apply,
The more expensive.
the more expensive the appraisal will be. So it behooves us to narrow down 1 or 2 options that you want to have appraised, as opposed to having everything appraised, because then the appraisal costs themselves will go up dramatically.
There is a chicken and egg problem in terms of the use that you're giving them may also affect whether it's actually viable on a site of a different size.
Right, and so the initial assessment, part of what Pannoni looked at was that any of these parcel sizes, you could still fit a building, so the 5A district. So if we, just as a comparable, right, if you take the building footprint at 650 Montgomery Avenue, would fit within the 1 acreage site concept, based on the, you scroll up. Is that right, Tony? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, there's enough buildable area to where a building that's in similar size to 650 Montgomery would fit within that footprint and still have, enough parking and enough, area for stormwater management, things like that. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how big the property is, what can fit on it, and then, it only gets bigger from there.
So in that light, I would like to suggest that we do not ask for an assessment on the biggest split, because that's more than half development, less than half park, which I think is, especially hearing that there's a viable development project that was built right now on a smaller footprint. I don't see the reason.
I agree with
I
you.
agree with that too, Fred. That
Okay,
maximizes
I'm hearing
green space. Yeah.
that's the majority of council.
Get rid of
the biggest one.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you just need to do one, you could always do the middle one, and you probably have some sense of what the lower one might be having with the bigger, in terms of if you're trying to get a point of reference.
Anybody opinions on doing the other 2 versus doing just one? I think the cost is.
Yeah, I guess.
They said like if you do one, it's like $3,400. The second one is $1,500 more. Or
Yeah.
something.
Wait, Fred, Michael, you're not saying do 2, you're saying do the middle one and then we can extrapolate.
Yeah.
I am hearing that. I'm seeing if that's what council wants.
Who's saying that
That's
the
like that.
second one would only be $1,500 more?
$1,750 more.
$1,750
So most of the
more.
money is for the first.
I wouldn't mind seeing the smallest.
Yeah, but now it depends on, the other variable is how many building types.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, would it be valuable to do the middle version with the 2 different uses? or with the 2 different zoning.
I-
Then that will give us some information
Yeah.
to work on.
I guess my concern is, not everybody's in this meeting tonight. If you only do one, I know what's gonna happen. People are gonna assume that we're set on that much, and that's not the case at all, you know? And so, I'd rather spend a little extra money to see the smallest footprint, quite frankly, so that people can see the value and the cost to us as a borough. I think more information in this particular project that's so important to the community, to spend an extra $1,700 is not that.
I've heard from you guys, just want to hear from people who haven't spoken. So Cindy, Ira, Jim.
I would say that we spend the money on the park with the smallest development footprint, so drawing number 1, because we're committed to enhancing that green space. And Tony, I can't visualize these. So when you're saying 650 Montgomery can fit on the smallest drawing allocation, that shocks me.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it kind
Yeah.
of shocked us too, honestly. We
Okay.
kind of looked at it like, wow, this will,
Yeah.
this will fit. And
I
it's,
would, that really is helpful for me to know. So I would not be interested in looking at 2 or 3. I would look at this first one.
And that comparison includes the parking lot?
That's what I
Yeah,
said.
includes
And
parking,
stormwater.
includes some area for stormwater management, yeah.
Right. Ira, Jim.
So if we only ask for one, the idea of inferring another one, would that be reliable? Is that, if we only give an assessment for the middle one or the smallest one, and we want to, just infer what the value of the one we don't ask for would be? Do people do that? Is that a reliable thing to do?
If I can speculate here a little bit, I think that probably no, it's not a 1-for-1, it's not like, well, you can get X amount of dollar per square foot, because now you start changing the area of retail. If you are looking at a mixed use with apartments, it changes that mix calculation. The more square foot area you have for the building, the more parking you have, the more parking, the more impervious, the more impervious, the more stormwater. So there's not a kind of linear connection between square foot area of a parcel versus a valuation.
Right, but would we even know whether additional acreage is a diminishing return or an expanding return?
Yeah, not having any expertise in this area whatsoever, I couldn't really speculate on that. Really, the only way to know would be to have the appraisal done. So again, we can get accurate numbers from the consultant who would do the appraisal if we gave specific parameters to say, if you were to do an evaluation of scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, how much would that appraisal cost us? And we can have add-alts if that's what you want to pursue. But again, I would recommend picking, kind of honing in on specifically what you want, so that we can get an accurate estimation of how much the appraisal will cost us. And then once the appraisal is done, then we can compare, if you wanted to compare, option A, the 1 acre versus the 1.5 acre, and then if you wanted to do residential only versus the corridor, the Montgomery corridor zoning. But again, the more options you add to the request for appraisal, it essentially restarts from 0. It's not like you can take that and then just kind of apply it, because they go through some calculation of max build out and all of these other things to figure out what would actually be that cost for highest and best use. So I don't think that I would recommend to do 2 different options and the 2 different zoning districts on those 2 options, because that would give us at least 4 options, and that starts to get costly from an appraisal standpoint. So I think it would be important to kind of hone in on what the land use goals are for this site, and then hone in on 1 or 2 options. So either pick a size and do 2 zoning districts, or pick a zoning district and pick 2 sizes.
So I'm hearing,
and not to jump ahead, but there's a discussion about having it appraised as is, but we adapted the use of the building as well. So that was also an appraisal.
Right.
That's coming
That
next.
was our.
So that would be something
Yeah.
else that would be in
Yeah.
loss to this conversation.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I'm hearing a desire to hear appraisals for two separate sizes. I'm hearing desire from Cindy.
No,
for the
that's
small.
not mine.
No, she wants
No,
to swap.
I'm on side,
You're on side just the small.
just the small.
Michael's on
two
side
zones.
just the bigger. So I'm hearing a desire to see from different people for two different things. So as a result, I strongly suggest that we get both of those appraisals done and we just determine one set of rules that we're gonna apply to those. One set of zoning rules. That would be my recommendation? No? I mean,
Well, I'm not
What's
speaking
everybody
for,
else? I mean, I
yeah.
think Cindy and I are only interested in the smallest parcel. It's not clear to me, I know where Michael stands. That's one. Where does everybody else stand?
Yeah, I would recommend doing the middle one, because I think that would give us the most valuable information, and then also see what the difference is between the two zoning.
I think that's what I would go with. Go with the middle one and two different types of uses.
I don't think it makes sense to, if people have some people have a strong preference for the smaller one, I think we ought to study the smaller one as well.
No,
We get
that's,
both numbers.
I would do, absolutely do the smallest one, but I think it's really important to do the two zoning. Because I
Two
don't
sizes,
know,
two zoning.
absolutely, I don't think the commercial use makes tremendous sense there.
Okay, all right,
And in
so,
terms of the zoning, so
what,
there's,
go ahead, Mike.
I was just trying to remind myself, because I think that what I'm about to say is accurate, but.
I mean, I'm looking at the zoning info right now, if you want me to.
No, not that,
summarize
I was gonna pull up the map real quick, just because I'm pretty sure.
You want me to get
One
that?
sec. I am actually.
Multifamily houses are permitted, which are different than apartment buildings.
No, not in terms of 3B. 3B is not, yeah. I think that probably the way that would make the most sense if you were gonna pick two zoning districts to look at. Yeah, okay. So I am recalling this correctly. So if you're gonna pick two to look at, you'd probably do 5B because much of Montgomery Avenue is already 5B. And then you might also do 3C because 3C also already exists on Montgomery Avenue and it's the step up from 3B.
And what is?
You mean 3A, you mean 3A?
No.
3C
3C.
exists on Montgomery
What is
Avenue. 3,
3C
up and
is.
look at it's at Montgomery and North Wynwood Avenue.
I mean, what does it?
Well, that's on the other side of, that's not.
It is, but it's on Montgomery.
Yeah, here we go,
3C
thank you,
Oh,
Matt. All right, do we have a stand or anything, or are you gonna hold it up? All right, so the red is 3A, that's basically just single family.
The yellow up
The
back
yellow
corner
is 3C, so that is residential, but it allows apartments. And then the purple is
Purple is
5B,
Or 5B.
yeah, which is the other Montgomery Avenue zoning.
So folks, we're looking,
Yeah, we're looking
Here.
right there,
Yeah.
so you can see why I'm suggesting 5B.
yeah.
Yeah.
3C, it's permissive residential, it's residential that has, let's see,
It's basically if you were going to pick two,
yeah,
then I would say those would be the two. They already exist on Montgomery Avenue. And 3B doesn't really make a ton of sense.
Well, the red is on Montgomery Avenue too, though.
Red is 3A.
the red
that
is
makes
3A.
more sense.
Well, it's on Montgomery, I'm saying if we're using the
Yeah.
logic of how we're doing it, there's a heck of a lot more 3A than there is 3C.
3A is gonna, 3A is basically single family, there's not a lot else that can be done there, and I don't think financially we're gonna get much of a number if we try to sell it for single family housing, it's just, I don't think it makes sense to do
Those are
that.
large lots, I think the minimum.
Minimum lot in a new subdivision is 3A is
10,500.
10,500 square feet.
Yeah, so they could maybe
Out of
put,
step with.
they could put two, maybe, single family houses according to the 3A.
But in 3B, it's multi-use.
3A's, you said 10,000 square feet?
3A is 10,500 square feet for
How
new
many
lot
are we?
subdivisions.
Yeah.
I mean, an acre is 43,560 square feet, so you figure
All right, so
you get
four.
4 houses.
Four houses, so we're talking about 4 houses, I mean.
But 3B, John, you just said has multi-family use property, right?
Multi-family house, which is different than an apartment.
Which is
Right.
different.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is that a twin? Is that
No, that's a separate dwelling. I think it's
Small
usually
multi,
up to
small
four.
multiplexes up
Oh,
to
okay.
5, but
Up
it
to
tiers
5.
depending on the.
Could you remind me of the sizes of the subdivisions and the smallest and the middle case?
1 acre, 1.5 acre. So, yeah, as Maggie said, that's 40 something, 42,000 square feet for an acre.
43,560. To be
You gotta
exact.
pick one.
Yeah, yeah, no.
And this is, and again, this is for our purposes of actually just trying to get an estimate of value. It's not a decision to subdivide the property in any given way.
I just think there's gonna be more variation in the price you get back based on the housing type
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
than on the
Agreed.
size.
Yeah.
We need to.
There'll be more information, and we're gonna pick 2 options.
Yeah, because it gives you a sense of, yeah, for sure.
You're looking at 2 different variables, really, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So from that perspective, I think that I would say if we were looking at 2 variables, it would be 5B and 3C.
The only reason why you want to look at 2 different sizes is because if it's individual units, in a larger property, you get more shared amenities like the Elm has.
Right.
But I think at 1 acre, you probably get enough. And I don't think that all of a sudden you're gonna have like a swimming pool because you went up.
It's just more units.
Also,
Well, it just also changes potentially the construction costs, right? Because if you're doing a surface park building versus like structured parking is gonna be what, like $40,000 a space? So it completely changes the way that you approach a property, which completely potentially changes the valuation.
Yeah, I just don't think there's enough of a size difference between the 1 and the 1.5 to warrant doing both of them.
Well,
Okay.
you don't know until you know. Yeah.
what's allowed in a 3C again?
3C is,
residential, but allows apartment buildings.
Okay.
it does
so
not allow commercial or mixed use.
Any other middle housing that you mentioned, like it would have to be in a 3C then?
It would exist.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that would be allowed in 3C.
It is
Which
allowed
one?
in 3C.
Yeah, so 3C is gonna give us more of a residential mix, 5B does
Right.
not. 3C allows detached houses, twin houses, multifamily houses, as John described, cottage, well, not cottages, 'cause it's not historic, apartment buildings. 5B allows only apartment buildings, commercial and mixed use.
And it doesn't.
Does not allow some of the
It
smaller
allows
residential.
apartment buildings if you already have it doesn't really allow.
It's a
apartment
conditional
buildings.
use for apartments.
It allows apartment buildings if you have an existing contributing resource within the historic district, which this property does not. So it does not.
Is that right? I thought, I didn't see that, I just saw this.
That's why we're doing the
It's a
recodification.
conditional
It's
use.
packed into like a provision somewhere deep within the code. But it was amended when I was on planning commission, so I remember that whole conversation. Because there's no areas in the borough really where we allow apartment buildings by right. Just its own potential issue, but that's for a different day.
As long as 3C allows for, some housing,
So yeah, 3C is not contiguous. There's no 3C district contiguous to this, what would be this parcel.
Do you find that problematic?
I find that I would think that we would be challenged.
Okay. So that's strong suggestion for me that we're not gonna receive that. It's 5B. 5B is the contiguous one.
Well, and then we have red.
Yeah, so that is the.
3A is also not, 3A is contiguous, and I would highly recommend not doing 3A.
3A is how we get 4 single-family houses on the 1
Yeah,
acre lot.
if we want to sell borough property for the compelling policy interest of having 3 mansions, or 4 mansions, I would not recommend doing that.
Okay, so it seems like the 2 zoning options don't make sense then.
Well, only the one, I think only the one makes sense, which is 5B.
Okay, well then look at 2 different sized properties, 2 different subdivisions.
Yeah, I think
Right.
if we're just looking at 5B, we could do the 2 different subdivisions. And yeah, I don't want to see single-family homes on that section. We're not going to sell it off just for single-family.
No, to be clear, I'm not suggesting that either. If there is a way that we could get 3C and provide folks with some starter homes or affordable homes, which I've heard repeatedly from folks, here's an opportunity that we can do that.
Well, we can't, I mean, the problem is
But you're saying
5B
we
is
can't.
just commercial or mixed use.
Yeah.
We don't have the,
Right, I mean, John, you know, I think if we go with 5B, we're gonna be challenged too. And I think actually 3C is probably, if it's gonna be palatable at all, and taking Lawrence's lead about coming to a compromise, you know, down the line, I have very little appetite for a large commercial development on that space. Our residents are consistently telling us that they're concerned about overbuilding. And from my perspective, I share Cindy's, I've repeatedly heard it, and I've said this repeatedly in different fora, we need to create housing for our seniors who are getting priced out of the market. We need to come up with housing that's affordable to our children who want to stay in our community and can't afford to live here. And to me, that screams 3C. And I recognize that we may be challenged on that, but I quite frankly think that we're going to be challenged if we only go with 5B anyway. So, down the line, I feel like we'll be able to have at least a reasoned discussion if we're willing to consider the housing.
Keep in mind though, we're not talking about we're talking about for the purposes of an appraisal. So
Right.
It's not for the purposes of,
But
because we can always place whatever restrictions we want on a piece of property, is that right, John?
Well, then it would affect the appraisal.
But but in terms of getting a sense of what the valuation is, which is I think.
But let me flip it around the other way, okay?
Yeah.
So, if, say, 3C comes out at a very low appraisal that doesn't make it worthwhile to sell the property, and I would say, oh, no, let's just turn it into parking lot then. I want to know that. I think we have to look at the practical realities of what what Lawrence said and what we've heard since before I was on council was there is no appetite among those neighbors for a large commercial property in that strip, and we know we will buy litigation. And I just don't understand why you're going to pick a solo route that sends a signal that you're willing to do this and potentially own this without considering the potential of another alternative that might be palatable to the rest of the community.
If that's the case, I would recommend there be some sort of an overlay put in that fronts Montgomery. I mean, you're working with your existing zoning code as is. It doesn't mean you can't provide a new zoning text amendment to provide an overlay to the 5B and have a rezone 5B to allow for that use that you're talking about.
And that's my point, is like the logistics of that are something for another day, because I would assume that prior to getting to any point where we which this conversation is super premature, but nevertheless, since we're here, prior to coming to any sale, you would want to have a much larger policy discussion that isn't you're just zoning one property. So, but again, this is not that discussion, right? This is just trying to get a sense of appraised value. And so for those purposes, it's...
For the highest and best use. And I guess the question though is, if apartments are the highest and best use,
yeah,
and you'd like to see an apartment there, we should tell the appraiser like it's an apartment. And if he comes back and says, oh, actually, the mixed use is worth more, we should say no. If you don't want there to be mixed use there. If you want the apartment use, you don't have to tell them the zoning district, you just have to tell them the use.
Then that's what I would say. That would be mine.
But I thought you said that you can't even propose the use of these, starter homes under a 5B because it only allows for mixed-use development.
It currently only allows for mixed-use development, but we have broader
We've changed the code.
we have broader policy issues that we need to address in zoning code generally, so you would,
I
will
get that. I'm
point out-
talking about $1,700 bill that I've asked for the assessment, and I feel very strongly that that assessment should include the possibility of a zoning change that allows for, I don't want to say affordable housing because that creates a different view, but housing that would be, useful and needed within our community for our senior renters, our young people who want to live here who can't afford to live.
I think you get at that if you say that we're asking for, to evaluate an apartment building use.
Okay, can I pause for a second? If we talk about the 3B district, which is contiguous, that allows multifamily houses, so you could get the sense of what if it's just small multifamily units, which I think is what you're describing.
But we're not going to be able, so if the policy goal here is to be able to create housing that working families who historically forged the backbone of Narberth can afford, we're not going to get that in that. So if we send them that and tell them to appraise that, it can come back, it'll give us things. There's not a logistical, actual way of a borough of our size to get at that. The way that you would get at that is to have them appraise an apartment building style, because that is the way that that sort of housing is developed today. Unless you're a larger municipality who can do land banking, who can do all of these other things, which we aren't.
So when I talk about this, I talk about not renting, like someone who wants to build equity and purchase. And Maggie, not to put you on the spot for the comprehensive plan, but in 2018, one of the recommendations was different housing types. And we've seen an influx of these $1.5, $1.7 million mansions. And if we have the opportunity on borough property to say, we are going to heed that advice on, again, folks who want to build equity in smaller either starter houses or aging in place smaller house, at either end of that spectrum, and we have an opportunity to utilize that for that, I would be very interested in that. In equity, not just renting, because again, I've heard so many folks say, when is it going to be condos? When do we want to build equity? And we don't have.
I can tell you that, what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of people who are pretty much our essential workers, our teachers, our healthcare workers, our firefighters. They cannot afford to live here. And
they have trouble making down payments. And you have entire groups of people in the history of this country that through a century have been deprived of equity and don't have the ability to make that down payment. But the biggest predictor of whether you can move up in life is the zip code that you're able to move into.
Oh, I agree
right?
wholeheartedly.
So providing actual pathways, right? Like when my grandparents came here, they moved into the workforce housing of the time, right? Which was row homes, which were row homes in Narberth, right? And that was their ability to actually get here, and then their children moved up.
Agreed.
And then,
I think we're all on the same page. I want people to be able to buy it.
All right,
not
folks.
rent, though, is
I am hearing two opposed views here.
It's not an apartment building.
I think that 3B is that's the zoning that Sabine currently has, right? That's the zoning the entire street has. That would represent what Cindy and Mike are talking about. It would be twins, it would be multifamily house as the options. I think we should propose that, and I think we should propose an apartment complex. We should say, come back with both.
Yeah. Yep.
Come back with these two visions.
property?
What's that?
On the 1 acre or the 1.5?
We're gonna ask for 2, I think we decided we do it on the 1.5 acre, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
If we're
I
gonna
would
do
do the
that,
one,
right.
but I'm gonna
I'll
compromise.
concede the 1.5 if I get the other.
I think that's what I'm hearing from council. Okay, I think you have your direction here. We're gonna
1.5 apartment and a 5B.
3B.
3B.
Just 3B. We're just saying apartment right now. We're not even gonna worry about mixed use. We're gonna assume that the apartment will be,
Okay,
more.
so-
I mean, the other problem is that we had originally talked about trying to get Wonder Spring into the basement, into the lower floor of that building. So,
Well, that'll just make it worth less, so
Yeah.
at least we'll have an upper bound.
Yeah.
Part of this exercise here is to figure out,
yeah, okay. All right, so we think the apartment building is gonna be the upper bound, and we think that the other is more in keeping with what we're hearing from the neighbors and what I'm hearing from Cindy and Mike here, so.
Just to
okay.
reiterate, this is just to get information. so
Yeah,
that
we're not
we can
doing
start
this.
Yeah, we're not
talking.
doing
Yeah,
anything.
So the whole point is, we get a number back from our appraisal, and that represents how much we would get from doing this, and we have to weigh that against the benefit to the community from turning it all into a park. So that's the whole point of this exercise.
Okay, so just so I can go back and get an accurate quote here, so we're doing 1.5 acres
Yeah,
as the only size option,
yep,
assuming either the 3B zoning, which is the existing zoning, or an apartment-only use. Right, not
I think that
not a
simplifies things.
mixed-use
Correct.
retail
Yeah.
apartment, just apartments.
because we think that, we think the apartment is gonna get the highest possible number if we decided to go that route.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Come
Okay,
back
thanks
with,
everyone.
Yeah.
All right, our second statement item. Okay, so this is coming about because council originally had considered whether the building at 201 Sabine, whether it would make sense for the borough to renovate this building, whether it would make sense to do something with the building. We had determined that, in our opinion, the deferred maintenance costs didn't make it worthwhile for us to continue with our commercial landlord status of what we're doing with the building. However, you know, different boards and commissions have approached, planning commission and the HARB both have an interest in preserving the building. And we had somebody come to us unsolicited and said, look, we're a school, we are interested in buying and renovating this building to use as a school, which council had a discussion and felt that that was reasonable to consider as well. So by allowing the possibility of one group to come in and look at the building, we have to allow others to look in here. If we did decide that this was an appropriate thing, we would have to go through a bid process. So again, this is a fact finding. We are not close to making a decision here, and even if we did decide that this was worthwhile, we would have to put this out to bid rather than selling it to any particular person. So this is determining to what extent we are interested in considering the reuse of the building, adaptive reuse of the building, what sort of tenants would be appropriate, and what would be our expectation for the rest of the space.
While also maintaining and expanding the park.
Yeah, we'll also maintain.
You
we're not-
skipped over the first
Yeah.
part, which was the most important.
Yeah,
Council
so-
reaffirms its commitment to providing parkland and open space at 201 Sabine Avenue that is equal to or greater than the amount of parkland provided on the site today.
I think if we went this route, it's likely it would be equal to. I think it would be basically the status quo, except the borough would sell the building. I think that would be the likely thing. We would probably take ownership of the park so that the park belongs to the borough, and then sell the building and some of the parking lot, or, we would make sure we control the park. We would sell the building, again, if it financially makes sense to us. So we're trying to figure out what the finances would be on that, and what the rules would be about who we might sell it to and what we might allow. All right, so we got this document in front of us. Michael, do you want to outline the main ideas here?
Yeah, it was basically just to pull together the various different threads on this. We knew already that the valuation of the property was going to be kind of coming, because that had been previewed before, and we knew there was interest in adaptive reuse. And actually, I looked back at before I was on council, there was only 2 times in the past where I had emailed council my thoughts. 3 times if you count the time I said, applied for planning commission. But the 2 actual times were both on 201 Sabine. And one of them was actually also asking to look at adaptive reuse of the property. Not, knowing that it was necessarily going to be doable or worthwhile or anything like that, but obviously it's no secret that one of my core values is housing and attainability and affordability, and I think that adaptive reuse is a demonstrated way to evaluate those sorts of policy outcomes. We also know that there's interest in other users of looking at that space as well. So it made good sense to me to say, okay, well, if we're looking at subdividing the property, then we also should look at an adaptive reuse scenario. And also to be able to get a sense of what that actually would mean practice, right? Does it adaptive reuse of the existing building, is there actually interest in that? Is it adaptive reuse where there would need to be some sort of addition or some sort of other new construction to help fund the adaptive reuse? What does it look like? Would that allow for some sort of expansion of the park, or would the parking lot need to be that size in order to serve? All of those different questions. The only way I think that you're actually going to get some answers to those questions in order to inform the way that we think about this is to allow people to actually look at the building. So that is kind of the idea behind that facet of fact finding, so that we could actually get information on that.
And if someone does come in and says, I'll pay you $2 million for the building, we don't have any basis of knowing how much that would be.
Right.
Which is why you would need an appraisal if you're going to entertain that as an option.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anybody comes to us with a monetary offer, our response is going to be to get our own appraisal. I mean, so far we have not received any numbers from anybody who has expressed interest in this building. So, okay, so that Michael laid out the document here. Council members have thoughts or concerns on this. I think the idea is that, assuming that council is in broad agreement here, we affirm this document as sort of our, to help give the borough office some guidelines about how to proceed when receiving inquiries about the property.
I think my only,
Iris.
only comment is that we have got to set a timeline. I mean, my God, we've been talking about this for 8 years in council, and we have not come to a decision, and the more we stall on this, the more it costs us in maintenance fees, the more it costs us on the time of staff and council. There's such an opportunity cost here that we have got to set on council some sort of guardrails and timeline for this. And then we need to get the data to make an informed decision, and then make a decision and act. Because this isn't healthy for the community, it's not healthy for our time, and it's certainly not healthy for our budget. So once we get these decisions, let's make the informed decision and actually act on it. This is our 5th manager who I think has tackled this.
All right.
But, I mean, actually, the property is not a financial drain right now. The issue is there's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
Because if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
it could become a financial drain.
If we have to replace the air conditioning or something,
Okay, well.
or the electrical
That's what I'm
system.
saying.
Well,
There's a major
It's a
failure.
declining asset.
It's absolutely, we're getting big bills for roofs and paint and deferred maintenance that we have to, as landlords, keep up. That is certainly taking from any revenue that we're bringing in.
Yeah, adding to what you're saying, it can quickly go from a
Yeah.
revenue generating asset
I know.
to a financial drain on the borough.
I just wanted to be clear that
Yeah.
right now, it's generating
Right.
cash flow for us, but that doesn't mean that it's a good idea to stay in that business,
Right.
given the state of the building.
And I also just want to add, and like I totally agree with, like, we have to act on this. There's a real cost to not acting on this. And I don't think we can also like be scared to talk about it.
Yeah.
And just be scared to talk about the policy just because there's a faction of the community who, you know, is against a certain option on the table. And so we need to be able to talk about this and then move this towards, because if we don't talk about it, then we will never have that chance to bring something to the community that will actually benefit our community and something that the community actually needs, so.
We can't reach a compromise per Mr. Goldberg if we can't talk about it with the community.
Yeah. I'm not
It's that
suggesting we
simple,
don't.
and
I'm
I
suggesting
feel
we-
like there's just been too much.
We're trying. Okay?
Yeah, no, I
All
agree.
right, so this is general discussion. I'd like to focus back on what's on the table here.
Oh, okay, but that was actually my original point before I had to disagree with Cindy. What do we expect after these people visit the building? I mean, are they gonna say, hey, we wanna talk more, or we're not interested? Is that really the level? I mean, what are we hoping to get out of this?
We are hoping to get one of them to tell us what they might offer if this were up for bid.
They're not gonna do that.
And then we can appraise it. I mean,
I think they're gonna tell you like, nice meeting you, you know, nice building, I'm never coming back here, or can we talk more?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
gonna be the.
And there's
they're gonna
information
hear.
in both of those responses.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if they say, can we talk more, then we have to get our assessment.
Right, understood, 'cause, I
That's
mean,
the point.
they're not gonna tell you what they're willing to pay, like, you know, after like, you know, one walk through the building.
There is the information online too, related to the conditions of the building. So-
Yeah, we're not hiding anything from them.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the school, people from the school have already read that
Right.
assessment and are fully aware.
I mean, if there is an opportunity to do adaptive
And they still
reuse
gonna
there,
come.
I think that's a huge.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't think it was a possibility, and then all of a sudden we're getting these interests, like, that solves a lot. In my mind, it solves the community's concerns, that we're not reconfiguring, taking down trees, et cetera. I mean, to me, it would be a win-win depending on what that adaptive reuse is, especially if it's if it's a school, solves problems. If it's another, maybe for-profit educational institution, that could be a compromise.
All right, I'm not hearing any disagreement with this document. Maggie, do you feel this gives you enough guidance to proceed?
Well, if we're going to be seeking an appraisal for the subdivision options, I would like to request if council can provide direction as to if you would like to then seek an appraisal of the building at this time concurrent with the other appraisals being conducted.
Do you feel that would be efficient use of resources?
If you're going to be comparing the options, it would be.
I think if the intent as outlined in this document is to conduct additional fact-finding and open this up for other people to evaluate that option, then I think yes, we should have that number so that we can compare apples to apples instead of chasing our tails and, you know, you go first, no, you go first. So if we just
All right,
do the
Councilmember.
appraisal, then we can have a
Okay, I
comparison.
see nods.
Okay.
Do you have sufficient information here to go ahead with that?
The
Let us know if we don't.
I guess my only question, and this might be something that I would need to work out with the appraiser, is that there's a couple, we say, you know, sale of the building, but does that mean sale of the building and we own the land rights? Is it a subdivision of just the building? There are other kind of considerations that would go along with a sale of a building, so I would just like clarity on what you intend when you say that.
I think, well, I would propose that we are selling the building, we are keeping the park, and there's a covenant that they're not taking the building down. And
Right,
putting something new up.
so then, right, that
That's what
would
the
be
adaptive reuse
that would be
entails.
the property, so the property parcel itself doesn't change at all, but there would be an understanding that there would be a deed restricted covenant on the portion of the existing park to remain as borough-owned park.
However you want to phrase it.
However
The
that
borough
works.
controls the park,
Okay,
and
that,
the rest of it, I think,
And then the use, have the adaptive reuse, are you putting restrictions on that?
yeah, according to the document here.
Will document lists educational uses, civic and institutional uses, or affordable attainable workforce housing.
So adaptive reuse does allow some demolition, but I think like, you know, as long as you keep, you know, a substantial portion of it.
Yeah, and this considers that as well, in terms of asking whether any portion of it would be removed or any additions or other things. But you had asked about the question of whether it changes if it's a long-term ground lease versus an outright sale. Is there a way for them to just provide us points of reference on both of those?
I don't know, but I can ask.
Because that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, I'd be interested in just giving a ground lease, which means that eventually the property will revert to the borough.
You retain control, but you can sell the actual physical structure. Or not, right? Or you can do a long-term lease on that, but I guess there's a million ways to cut that.
Yeah, we can talk about what those options would look like. So what I can do is reach out and get a cost estimate of the appraisal for the options that we've discussed tonight and bring that before council at an upcoming meeting.
I guess, I'm just unsure what we're going to get that building assessed before we find out if anybody would even be interested.
Yeah.
We've had some, the school has expressed general interest. They are not leaving.
In other words, they read the documents and they're still coming to see it, so.
Well, they did their walkthrough.
Yeah.
Oh, they did the
And they are still interested.
And they're still, okay, so we
They
already passed
haven't
the
given
point.
us any, that's the extent of our communication.
But they didn't
are still-
say nice knowing you.
Yeah, they didn't say nice knowing you. That is the extent of our communications with them, really. We don't have any
And just
specifics.
to ask the question, that before we even entertain a bid, we would ask the potential buyer to also give an assessment. So is there
Well,
anything?
but we wouldn't want to trust.
Yeah, we would
No,
want
but not even to, I'm saying we would get our own. But is there any harm in saying, oh, school, you seem to be interested. If you're that interested, you pay for an assessment. If you're still interested, come to us, then we'll pay for an assessment.
It sounds like it sounds like it's a marginal additional cost if we're already doing an assessment on part of the property anyway to.
This one would be a little bit more because it's the existing building. It's not just an undeveloped parcel. But it'd be a step up for it.
So there's some savings, but not a ton.
Sure.
Maggie, I'm sorry, can I ask you to reply?
Say that again. The question.
Is there harm in saying to the school, oh, if you want to continue the conversation, please bring us an appraisal? Kind of if they're really interested that they're going to put enough money to pay for appraisal ourselves. And then we, of course, wouldn't trust that, we would get our own. But it saves us, to Ira's point, perhaps spending money on another appraisal if we don't have anybody that's really serious.
I think at that point, what direction they would be looking for would be in terms of what the scope of the interest would be. Is it a long-term lease? Is it a land lease? Is it the sale of the building? So they would want to know what sort of engagement you would be looking for, and then potentially, I don't know the answer to that, we'd have to reach out to them, but we would just need to identify what you would be open to in terms of the sale. It sounds like though, if we're agreeing to sale of the property, the property as a whole, with the carve out of the park, if that's something that you want to engage with, I can reach out to them to see if they would be interested in providing an appraisal.
I think council's all over. That was my idea, but council has suggested several other things, so I'm
Right,
not sure
so
there's a consensus.
I feel like there isn't a consensus, so no, I don't think that I have the information at this time to reach out to request that appraisal.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have a direction. I think does council want to affirm the statement of fact finding? Are there any objections to just move? I mean, I think we could put this on our website. Any objections?
So we're saying we're gonna do the appraisal ourselves, or?
I think we need to get that number, and
I'm not sure.
we don't have a number at this time to do that appraisal. I think we should, let's get a number and then vote on that at the next meeting.
On a number on.
So just
The further appraisal.
Just the 1.5 and then the 1.5 with the.
Yeah, and then the building.
Yeah, the as-is property.
Yeah.
Well, right, but the as-is property with what restrictions do we have? We have that?
So that would be what's in the.
Okay, so we have that, and then does the appraiser need to know if it's a lease or a purchase, or does that matter? I mean, it seems like.
You said you were going to ask the appraiser whether that.
Right, so there was the question, so I would need to get clarification from the appraiser.
If it matters.
Yeah, so if we would need to provide him with specific direction for that, or if we can, again, kind of do an either-or option, and if that would change the cost.
Okay.
I'm not sure we can approve the building appraisal right now, because I think it's not clear.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So we need more information.
Yeah, we need more information. So we'll get that, we'll vote on that.
I think the final PSA to council here is the tremendous lift that's on Maggie and Emily on day 2, day 3. So, like, I'm gonna say again, Ira, I think you said at the beginning of council, pick 2 things, pick 3 things, right? We have the bridge, we have 230 Haverford, we have a master park plan, we have Sabine. Aside from the general daily keep the lights on and the street paved, we have got to figure out what is gonna go. And be mindful of burnout and productivity of our staff. Because we are a community that is small and we love a lot of initiatives and we are all eager, but we also don't want to drown our staff. I think we need to all hold ourselves accountable to that, because this is a huge lift. It's easy for us to say to do this, but I know how much time it takes to do all of it. So please tell us when it gets overwhelming, is the point. Thank you.
All right. It's getting late, is what it's getting. So let's move on to our monthly reports. They're in the packet. Committee reports, Finance Administration.
Okay, thanks. So as you saw, we just pulled through public comment and the rules of council finally done. Aside from that, we are continuing our boards and commissions review. We reviewed an initial edit of Human Relations Commission tonight. You can see that in the packet. It's going to receive a couple more revisions, I'm sure. The employee handbook, I think we're going to continue to work on and have that probably, you think that'll take another month maybe to come back?
I mean,
I think we just approved it, didn't we?
No.
No.
We pulled it out.
Oh, right.
We tabled it.
It was on the agenda and we pulled it.
Right, I have some proposed edits, so I should be able to get it back on our agenda for next month.
Okay.
Not a problem. But I want to be able to circulate it all to you with the comments that I have.
Shade tree review is on pause because of we're going to, or the office is going to work on a saldo procedure checklist, and we think shade tree is highly dependent on that. Planning Commission, as you all know, there's a zoning recodification in progress, and we expect, I don't know if we talked about this, but we expect that Planning Commission would report through FNA regarding their zoning recodification progress.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. And we expect, starting next month, Todd Bressie will be joining us regularly for those. We also had a first look at a boards and commissions appointment policy, which is just a wish list at this point, to just solidify steps we could use to enhance the appointments of the policy and get a better view on applicants, and provide some additional input from the existing commissions. And we're continuing with website and newsletter communications progress. We didn't do much of that tonight, so we're running out of time, but that's in progress. Kelsey's working on that with Mike Simonson.
Okay.
That's what we got.
Thank you. Infrastructure Committee?
We did not meet this month, well, we didn't meet last month, but we're meeting next week to look at the proposals for the stormwater bump outs.
Okay.
And then I guess it'll come to council after that.
All right. Public health and safety?
So Public Health and Safety met on March 14th. So the speed humps on Meeting House Lane, those will be installed between Williams Avenue and the driveway to 650 Montgomery. Notifications will be mailed out to the affected residents. We already have all the materials for that and ready for installation. There was also a recommendation from Public Works for installation of a street light on Woodside Avenue, on the dark section of that road across from 28 Woodside Avenue. The cost is $1,446, and the funds will come out of the streetlight, electric, and repair budget item. Mainline Greenway, ongoing.
That's all the streetlight costs? Is that $1,400? Okay. That's surprising. Sorry, I just thought. Anyway, go ahead.
Mainline Greenway, that's ongoing. The final design for the eastern Mainline Greenway segment is under review at Lower Merion Township. There was also a March 7th workshop for the western expansion of the Mainline Greenway route beyond Villanova. And then for the Lower Merion and Narberth Transportation Plan, Manager Dobbs provided an update on that. We're expecting a map for preliminary review by the steering committee within the next month.
And we have another meeting set up next week, actually.
Okay. And then the Parks and Rec Board, the planning is underway for the 3 events. They had their March 11th annual park users meeting. So the 3 events, we've heard about the family movie night in April, environmental and educational events at Elm Grove, and food truck festival in September. The police advisory committee is working on what information should be provided on the police webpage on the borough site. And from the Shade Tree Commission, April 12th is tree planting day, and they're looking for volunteers to help plant the trees for that day. Starts at 9 a.m. And they're also working on the downtown street tree plan. They also have developed code enforcement informational tags. That's basically if a resident receives a code enforcement violation, then it'll also come with an informational tag to how to properly prune the tree, along with contact information on how to contact them. And just a quick update on Friends of Narberth Green initiatives. Bob Weisford is actually stepping down as chair, so but will continue to serve on the board as a member. And so they'll need to identify a new chair. And they're still waiting on federal approval for their 509A1 application that they filed last year. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions from any of the committee chairs? All right, any new business? Any old business? Comments for the good of council? Okay. We are going to adjourn into executive session to discuss disposition of borough real estate and contract services, and we may return to approve a contract. We're going to, if we're going to approve that.
No.
Okay, so we will not return to session after the executive session. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, let's vote to adjourn. All those in favor? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. And then we will start the executive session in a few minutes.